Hello everyone, welcome to Spring Java Lab. In today's video, we'll learn how to use Spring Batch Processor to validate and filter the data from the CSV file before storing it to the database. So let's go to Spring Initializer and create the basic project structure. So here I have selected the language as a Java with the project type as Maven. Next, we will be focusing on adding the dependencies. So here I will be adding the web dependency. This will provide the embedded Tomcat server to run the application. Next, we will be adding the batch dependency as this is a Spring Batch project. Next, to store the data into the database, we will be using the JPA. So I have added Spring Data JPA dependency. Now here we will be using the Oracle database. So let me add the Oracle driver dependency. After adding this dependency, we will be clicking on generate. So this will download the project in a zip file format. I have already imported one project in IntelliJ. So let me show you that. So here is the project I have already imported in IntelliJ. This project is configured to read the customer data from one CSV file and write it into the Oracle database without any validation. We have already seen how to read the data from the CSV file and store it into the Oracle database step by step in my previous video. If you have not watched that video, the link is in the I button. I highly recommend to check that video first. Now let me show you the CSV file that we are going to use in this example. So here you can see I have placed input.csv file in the resources directory. It contains name, email and country. But here you can see it contains some invalid entries like missing names and bad emails. So we'll be filtering out those records with the help of Spring Batch Processor. So here is the Spring Batch config class. We have already covered this in my previous video as I mentioned. So we'll be covering this on a high level here. So here it contains one job, import customer job. Job consists of one step, import customer step. Now this step consists of the reader and writer. For reader, we are going to use the FlatFileItemReader. So it will read each row of the CSV and it will be mapped to the customer object. Here I have provided a line to skip as 1 because the first line of the CSV is the header and we are going to skip that. Here next I have configured a target type. As I mentioned, each row of the CSV file will be mapped to the customer object. So I have provided the target type as customer.class. Next I have provided the CSV file location as it is in the resources directory. I have used the class path resources. Next I have configured delimiter. It will tell Spring Batch to read a comma separated values from the CSV file and map it to name, email and country of the customer object. Now let me show you the customer class. Here you can see it is an entity which is mapped to the customer table in the database. For ID I have used the sequence and it contains name, email and country. Next, to store the data in the database, I have simply used the JpaItemWriter and the reader will be passing the customer object to the JpaItemWriter and it will be saving the data to the database. Next, I have configured the job launcher controller. It's a REST controller used to trigger the job. Here you can see I have used the job launcher class to trigger the job. Basically, we are triggering the import customer job. Currently in this job, we have not configured the processor, so there is no validation. It is simply storing all the data from the CSV file in the Oracle database. I have already run the job one time, so let's go to database and see how data looks without processor. As you can see, all the records are saved in the database even with missing names and invalid email. That is because currently there is no validation. Data is going straight from the CSV file into the database. Now let's fix this by adding a processor to filter out the invalid records. By the way, this is a new channel, so your like and subscribe would be a big support. So please take a moment and hit that like and subscribe button. Coming back to a topic, now we'll be creating the processor. For that, I will be creating one class customer ItemProcessor. Here we'll be implementing ItemProcessor. Now ItemProcessor is a function interface of Spring Batch. Let me show you that. So here you can see it's a function interface. It contains the input type and output type. Now processor comes between the reader and writer. So input type here means what the processor will be receiving from the reader and output type means what the processor will be returning to the writer. So both will be customer in our case. So let me just provide customer, customer. Next you can see it contains one abstract method that we need to override. That is the process method. Inside the process method, we will be adding our validation. So let me just override the process method here. And I will be renaming this variable to customer. Now here we will be adding the if else condition for our validation. So if the validation is successful, we will be returning the customer object. Else we will be returning null. So whenever we return null from the processor, that particular record will be skipped and it won't be saved in the database. And if the validation is successful, we will be returning that customer object and it will be saved in the database. So for that, I have added the if else condition here. Now next step is to define this isValid method. So let me just create one method for that. Now here we will be adding the validation for our customer record. I have already added logic somewhere else. So I'm just copy pasting it here. So you can see here I have added the basic check. Like the customer should have the name, customer should have the email and email should contains @. And also I have added one filter based on the countries. So the customer that belongs to India, only those customers will be saved in the database. Also, I will be adding @component annotation. So this class will be registered as a bin in Spring. Now next step is to plug this processor between the reader and writer in our batch configuration. So let's go to Spring Batch config class. Here we will be auto wiring the processor. So let me use @auto-wire private customer item processor, customer item processor. Now as we know, the processor will be between the reader and writer. So here I will be providing the processor using process method, and I will be providing customer item processor. Now we are done with the job configuration to filter out the invalid records. So let me just start the server. Now server has started successfully. Before we run the job, let's clear the customer table so we can clearly see only new valid records. So here I will be executing the query to truncate the table so that all the records are removed. So truncate table customer. Now we can see all the records from the customer tables are removed. Now let's run the job and check the database again. For that I will be hitting the get endpoint we have designed to trigger the job. So now job has triggered successfully. Now we'll be going to database and check the output. So here we will be executing the select query. Now you can see only valid records from India are saved. The rest were filtered out by the processor. And that's how you can use ItemProcessor in Spring Batch to validate and filter the CSV record before we save them to the database. You can also use processor to transform the data. Let's say you want to convert the customer name to uppercase before saving it to the database. So you can add that logic here. If the customer is valid, just change the customer name to uppercase. Before we end this video, let me quickly show you the blog that I have written on Spring Batch. You will find this tutorial along with many Spring Batch articles here. I have added the link in the description and a pinned comment to check it out. In next video, we'll see how to handle the record that throws exception using custom skip policy. If this video helped you, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends. This is a new channel and your support really motivates me to keep creating more tutorials. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.